So welcome to ArtTable's first virtual event. For those of us who aren't members, ArtTable is a foremost professional organization dedicated to advancing women leadership in the visual art world. We strongly welcome you all to join if you haven't already done so. We require 5 years of professional experience and an interest and passion about women leadership, the art world, etc. So it's really exciting to have Anne and Barbara here for our first virtual event. Before we begin with them, I just want to say a few housekeeping things. You're currently muted to ensure the smooth quality of this conversation. I think for those who don't know, so your microphone is turned off. We will be having a Q&A at the end where I will go around and unmute people who have questions. If you would like to ask a question or think of a question while this conversation is happening, please feel free to put it in the chat. For those who don't know how to use the chat feature, if you go to the bottom of your screen and see where you have the controls, there should be a little chat icon and you can go ahead and type something there, and we encourage you to do that, and I will try my best to get to your questions. My name is Imogen Fairbairn. I manage programs at ArtTable, and I'll be kind of helping Barbara and Anne with this conversation. If you have any questions about future events or about membership, please contact me. You can do that by emailing programs. I'm going to put it in the chat, programs@arttable.org. Great. So on the final day of what should have been an epic Women's History Month, but has been slightly derailed, it seems very fitting that we're having a discussion about curatorial action, response, and collaboration with Barbara Pollock and Anne Verhalen, who recently founded the timely exhibition and online platform, How Can We Talk About Art at a Time Like This? So hi, Barbara. Just going to ask you to give a wave.
Hi.
Hi,
Pleasure
Anne.
to be here.
Thank you both.
Yes.
So this discussion is about responsive online curatorial action and collaboration. I'd love to jump in with hearing first about how the two of you met and started collaborating.
Well, first, I just want to make a minor correction. Is how can you think about art at a time like this?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
But Barbara and I met about 3 years ago, and about, I guess, a year ago, we started really going to see art together on a like a weekly basis. We have very similar tastes and opinions. We're very strong opinionated women, so we really love to discuss art together. So we've been doing that for a while. So I feel it was kind of inevitable for us to kind of collaborate on a project at some point together.
And literally, Anne called me on a Friday and said, the Friday when everything just started closing, and said, we should do a website. What should we call it? And I had been working on a book proposal of this title. And I said, we should call the website, How Can We Think of Art at a Time Like This? And the question is kind of a double-edged question. Because on one hand, many of us feel that art is trivial when a major crisis is going on. But on the other hand, it's an opportunity to reconceive how we view art making and the distribution of art. So it kind of is a question that has inspired a lot of people to respond.
Yeah, so that Friday morning, just for everyone to kind of have a timeline in head, it was Thursday night was when Trump closed flights from Europe into the US. And then Friday morning, we kind of woke up all with the institutions closing their doors. And, you know, many galleries have prepared their online viewing rooms already, or you know, like more of I think there was already kind of an online revolution on more of the sales side of art. And so they've already kind of prepared themselves for this kind of scenario, I think, or had little parts in place. So we started Friday morning as we felt that it's super important to have a platform or an exhibition that kind of talks about the global crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, but also we believe that the crisis has been going on since 2016 and maybe even before that. And so we feel that in times like these, we really need to turn to artists, creatives, and thought leaders in order to kind of lead us the way now that all our behaviors are kind of disrupted and there's a lot of emptiness, and that can be filled with like positive or negative. So we strongly believe that we need to look at artists to kind of lead our way through this crisis, but also out of the crisis. So we
literally put up the site in like over that weekend. We launched on Tuesday, March 17th, and we already had, I got up Saturday morning and started emailing artists, and we had enough artists for 2 weeks by Sunday. Yeah. Because there was such work. Such a feeling that they wanted to participate in this.
Yeah, we've been super blessed with everyone's enthusiastic participation, and so we've been very, very grateful for
very grateful.
Yeah. And for those who might not be super familiar with the site, can you talk a bit about how it's set up and laid out, and sort of I know you just touched on the mission and vision of it, but just sort of the site as its kind of day-to-day goal, and then also sort of long-term, not necessarily long-term, but sort of
I mean, our site, I mean, we built that in about 24 hours, or from our living room.
It's a beautiful site.
So and I'm not a professional website developer by any means, but so we think that the art that we curate is very strong. It has a very strong message, and so the website is particularly clean, easy to navigate. We launched on Tuesday morning with 6 artists, and we are launching a new artist every day for the foreseeable future, most likely till November 3rd, election day, depending on
whether we have an election.
Whether we have an election and what the result is. We might have to continue further, but that's for now. That's kind of like the plan for the foreseeable future.
So the majority of the site is the exhibition. On the front page of the site is one image from each artist in the exhibition. If you go to, and if you click any of those images, you go into that artist's page, which is a gallery of works by that artist. And at the bottom of every artist page is links to that artist's website, their gallery website, any organizations they want you to support, things like that.
Yeah.
But there's a page right at the beginning called Start a Conversation, where we urge people to come and make comments. We're getting comments from all over the world to join in a dialogue. Like, the platform of having a dialogue is the heart of the website. And we're still working out kinks there. We're trying to figure out the easiest way to make that conversation happen. But we've only been up 2 weeks, so we're trying to work it out. But everybody here today should go and post a comment. That's what we would tell you.
Yeah, right now you have to sign into your Gmail, I believe, so you can get a notification if people respond to your question, your like your worries, like anything that you want to express. So it's
or you can sign in as a guest.
Or you can sign in as a guest. So it's just an extra step that we're not sure if we want to have that, because we want it to be like as easy as possible to have a conversation. The importance of that is also that we are a curated show. All the artists are very much selected by me and Barbara, and in addition to that aspect, we do want it to be a universal dialogue, a global dialogue. So all the artists are, we make an effort to have a very diverse group of artists that can kind of tie into these subjects and to the crisis from all over the world. This is not a New York story. This is not an LA story. You know, we are all in this together. We're all going through this. Each country will have their own challenges in regards to COVID-19 or whatever is happening right now. So it's really important for us to have that kind of dialogue in between the art. But since we are selecting the art that's on in our exhibition, we do really want other people to also be able to contribute and have a space where they can give their thoughts and ideas. So that's why, you know, the conversation page is important. Raising questions on social media is something that we aim to continue to do, and kind of create that dialogue. And then per Barbara's quote, point on, you know, the credits that we give below each artist page. We are nonprofit. We want to stay nonprofit. We want to have a very open dialogue and have, you know, like, we don't think that that's possible if there's any sale element tied to it. But we do understand that it's difficult times for everyone, and especially also artists. You know, like, many artists have had their shows canceled for the foreseeable future, or perhaps even the whole year. So, you know, having people that land on our platform that might be interested in purchasing something, we directly, you know, like, have a link to their artist studio or the gallery, so we can support at least somehow financially, if that
Yeah, well, I am a very big believer that something happens in a non-commercial space about art that doesn't happen in a commercial space. I started my career working at Franklin Furnace, which was one of the alternative spaces in the late 1980s, early 90s, and really witnessed a kind of freedom for artists and a kind of open dialogue that you don't necessarily find at a gallery opening or an art fair. And one thing that was very important to us in developing this as a non-commercial platform is that since we launched, Art Basel launched their viewing rooms, and many galleries are launching on-site things. But we feel like all of those projects are a little tone deaf to where people are at right now. I don't think people are thinking of art as commodities. I think people are really thinking of art as a refuge, as a comfort, as something that makes them less lonely. And that is what we're trying to address with our site.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's take a look at some of the art in the site, and we can perhaps talk about, you know, why these particular works were selected. Hang on, I'm just going to pull up the presentation. So for those who haven't read the site, Barbara and Anne describe the artists and the works that they choose, or the artists they choose, consider thought leaders, artists who struggle for futuristic pessimism, political outrage, and psychic meltdowns. So we're going to see a few examples of that, and perhaps we can kind of talk about how these artists sort of fit.
I do also want to add is that another thing that we ask for our artists is give us a short statement of how, because many artists now that we've curated for the next couple of weeks will make work really in direct response to the crisis. But of course, in the first week, we had a lot of artists giving existing work that still are super relevant to what's happening right now. So we kind of wanted them to give a statement of how this is relevant, what is important, what is on their mind right now. This could be, you know, this could be a one sentence, like, you know, one sentence response to like a lineas of thoughts and ideas around this. You know, like everyone is like at a different space at the moment with everything that's going on, but we think it's very important to kind of have that element to really reflect on our page as well. So that's something that's the language on the artist page is the artist statement. So that's just what I wanted to kind of say.
Yeah, great. So let's begin with Rosanna Paulino, who I think was an artist that was chosen last week. Do the two of you want to speak a little bit about her work?
Well, first of all, the presence of Rosanna Paulino on our site is indicative of how we want to have a global reach. She's an Afro-Brazilian artist who worked for over 20 years before she was ever exhibited in her home country. By the time she was exhibited in Brazil, she already had an international following. And all of her work deals with the stereotypes, the legends, the position of women in Afro-Brazilian culture, which she views as tied back to its roots in slavery in Brazil. And she works in sculpture and prints, and we just really loved the drawing. So we posted this drawing, which, you know, I think is indicative of resistance. And whether it speaks to the current virus or not, it's indicative of how artists have expressed resistance, especially in Brazil, which is an increasingly right-wing authoritarian regime. So that's why we had Rosanna.
Yeah, I think it's also would be interesting for people to, you know, go see her page, because there's another drawing that kind of really goes with this drawing, that is much more a female figure, that's almost like a sort of Mother Earth, very caring, and I think the two tied together is kind of like this for me personally, it's kind of this two ways that we can go, right? I think, you know, like it almost resembles good and bad in like how I perceive both drawings together, which I find very interesting to my point previous of being able to choose like what path we choose or what we choose to follow, negative and positive. So they're very strong works together also for people. Yeah.
And I know Barbara and Anne, when we spoke yesterday, we talked a little bit about how it's not just about these artists being political and having this kind of activist mentality, and what it's also about the kind of specific work and thinking about how the works fit together in the way that you do when you curate an exhibition. So I'd love to hear you talk more about that as we kind of go through these images and how these works fit together.
Yeah, I mean, we have artists that we really want to work with, but perhaps not always every single piece of their work, right? It's not just about creating beautiful work. It's about really the intention and the meaning behind it, and how it ties into adding to the dialogue. So, yeah, kind of.
Great. So next up, we have Miriam Benani, who I think was yesterday's artist.
Yeah, I mean, Miriam, I'm a huge fan of Miriam. For those of you who aren't familiar with her work, there's like an element of humor in there, which I think really fits with us too. Like we do have humor, even though we're very serious, and her work has very serious topics, but there's some sort of humor or lightness to the work as well. This work particular is a work that is created earlier as well. It was, I think, first created in 2016. She is Moroccan. She's based in Brooklyn, but she films her family mostly, or adolescents in Moroccan schools, and a lot of her work have tie into immigration, yeah, so she kind of adds elements of animation to the existing video features of her family and her roots, and creates a different story around what's happening. So there's an element of fantasy, but then also what I think is very genius of her is the presentation of her work. So we included 2 images in the exhibition of installations. Most of her work is very sculptural. Her sculptures don't live without video, so each video is presented within a sculpture and kind of ties into how do you perceive things. It plays with how do you take on the message. It kind of puts you in certain positions. Her work was curated in the Whitney Biennial last year. So for those of you who've been there, there was this cultural videos on the roof, which I think is very interesting also right now to kind of like have that tailored view of art, because right now we're all viewing it online. So I think it's very interesting to kind of have that tailored vision, because there's no like reality kind of
What?
so the
What?
experience
Tell
of
me.
it is important.
Oh,
Oh,
we just remind everyone to keep themselves muted.
Oh,
All right, you
wow.
want to say some more about Miriam?
I just want to say that this is really typical of the way that we are finding that artists are reinterpreting their work during this crisis. She made this work, Gradual Kingdom was about the gradual incursion of globalization on her town in Ramat.
Yeah, you know, I can see that.
Sorry, Barbara. I think can someone, it sounds as though someone has unmuted themselves.
Yeah, I think it's Josie. I see a Josie.
Well, they don't really care about outsiders.
Okay, there we go.
Right.
Don't know how that happened. Sorry,
So
Barbara.
this film was originally about the gradual encroachment of globalization on her hometown of Rabat. But when we watched it recently, it really looked like the spread of a disease, the spread of a virus. So works are being reinterpreted right now. It's one of the questions that we asked in our daily newsletter just yesterday. How are you looking at art differently during this crisis? Does being at home by yourself make you look at art differently? Does the sense of danger around us make you look at art differently? That's one of the questions we're trying to raise.
Mm.
Yes.
Great. Sorry about that. Okay.
Right. Deb Cass.
Love it.
I mean, this work by Deb Cass is sort of perfect for what's going on right now. When she first made this was about the state of emergency that President Trump puts us in, and that every single day seems like another crisis. But it was incredibly apropos for our site, given the current crisis, where we definitely feel like we're living in the like on the edge of an emergency room at all times. And Deb has been an activist and an artist since the 1980s. And we have a number of works on our site. What's really interesting is that she often uses lyrics from a Barbra Streisand song or from a Stephen Sondheim musical to as the text in her images, often using them to address transgender or AIDS or other issues. So, for example, on the site, we have the painting Happy Days Are Here Again, which is all Black, taking the DNC's theme song, which Barbra Streisand has re-recorded, and turning it into like a work that really makes you question whether we'll ever have happy days again. And we're really thankful to Deb. So this site was a great contribution to our exhibition.
Did you just draw a heart on this?
No. I'm nervous because there have been reports of Zoom hijacking, but no one should be able to share the screen apart from me. So if you are annotating, please stop. Although that was quite a nice addition. Okay, great. Thank you both. And do you want to talk? I loved hearing about kind of the response that some of the artists have had to your request. Do you want to talk about sort of that response that you've had when asking artists to kind of take part in this exhibition?
It's been overwhelmingly enthusiastic, and now we're even getting artists writing to us asking to participate. And it's not an open call, and Anne and I go over every work together. But the artists were like, so much like, this is what we really needed right now, or this is what I'm really thinking about right now, or how important are the issues you're raising. These are the kind of things we're saying. we're getting from people. And we know that we're asking emerging artists and established artists and artists all over the world. And we know that artists are all suffering right now because all their shows have been canceled, all sales have been canceled, a lot of opportunities that they had been working on for several years have been postponed. So we know we're asking a lot for them to donate work for this, or donate images for this, and to take the time to think about this. But so far, the cooperation has been fantastic. I'm trying to see if I can move this.
I'm trying to, I just lost the Zoom.
Oh, okay, that's better.
Yeah, if anyone's having issues with the images, with our images going across the presentation, you can actually drag the Zoom screen so that you can see the artwork in full. Okay, so here we have Janet Biggs.
So
Well, go ahead.
just
You see Janet Biggs?
1 second. I just lost the your screen share. I'm just looking at everyone's beautiful faces. Oh, okay, I have it.
Okay.
Perfect.
I literally 2 weeks before we launched the site was at Cape Canaveral with Janet Biggs, who was having an artwork of hers launched into space on March 6th. So we were there standing in a field at the Kennedy Space Center watching a rocket go off at 12 o'clock at night and at midnight. And she had tears in her eyes. She was like, this is my dream come true, to have my artwork go into space. Janet has been training at Mars simulation sites for the last 2 years and making these fantastic videos that really raise questions about what's going to happen when there's no longer life on Earth.
Yeah.
All of these space missions are about exploring, colonizing Mars, which she has mixed feelings about. But she also sees it as, you'll see in her video, there's also footage from a refugee camp in Djibouti, Ethiopian refugee camp. And she equates the exodus to Mars with looking at it as another refugee problem. That this is just going to be another problem about who gets to go, who gets to stay. Those are the issues she's raising in her work.
Yeah. So this also kind of ties back to having a very diverse kind of different angles of what this issue raises questions for, right? So, you know, environment, what's going to happen with our planet? How is our future going to look like? How are we going to reshape our future? Or like, where are we going to live? Like all these kind of questions. We want to be able to have not just one streamlined dialogue, but we really want to have like different angles of like what other questions are being raised while we're in this crisis. So she's a perfect example of that, I think.
Yeah, and in terms of sort of presenting this sort of work, are there links to the films on the site?
The films are on the site.
The films are on the site. Brilliant.
The films live on the site. Yeah, correct. The only artist that had artwork that is not on our site is Miao Ying, who gave us Digital Detox, which is the artwork itself is a website. So there's some stills on our site, but there's a big link that can link to her artwork because it's an actual existing website. So she's the only one that the particular artwork doesn't live on our site. The rest all lives on our site.
Great. So if you haven't seen it, you're going to have a fun afternoon exploring.
Yeah.
Judith Bernstein. I love this.
Yeah, well,
Judith was one of the first. Go ahead, Anne.
She was one of the first artists that we curated, and I mean, her work really resonated with where Barbara and I were at mentally. You know, like especially in the first day, like this was so resonating with us. But we love Judith. So these works are all made in 2016, most of them, right? 2016, in direct response of Trump's presidency, obviously. And I think it's even more relevant now that, you know, we still, even though we're in this global COVID crisis, it's still mostly Trump dominating our news channels and you know, all his ridiculous comments. And, you know, you can have, obviously, you can all have your opinion about his presidency, but yeah, I think.
And this Friday, we're going to have a conversation with Judith on the website. We don't know if it's going to be a Zoom meeting. We're making the decision this afternoon, or if it's going to be pre-recorded. But I mean, Judith Bernstein is an artist who worked for 4 decades and nobody recognized her work or thought it was too outrageous to show. And then people caught up with her just in the last 10, 15 years. And so for me, she's a personal heroine of mine, hero of mine, because she really worked on developing her work by herself, something that so many artists are struggling with right now, without an audience for many, many years. And yet she's retained all, I mean, you could look at this painting, you would think this is being made by a 25-year-old artist. It's got all that energy and everything and in it, and that kind of fuck you spirit. So we had to have Judith on the site.
Yeah. So the interviews that we're doing, that's a new element that we're introducing, just kind of tapping more or going even more into the dialogue and the conversation. Yeah, so that's something that we want to continue doing, like once a week, having a conversation with one of the participating artists so they can explain themselves even further of like any thoughts and ideas that they have around like what we should be doing next or what we should be thinking about next. So yeah, but Judith is the perfect one to start with, I think.
Yeah, I think it's great thinking about how the site has almost has the kind of programming that an exhibition that's happening in real time would, not this isn't happening in real time, but a kind of in-person, a traditional exhibition would have, in the form of your newsletter, your social media. There seems to be a lot of traction and things happening around the page.
Yeah, I mean, we have a really daily program where we send out a newsletter every day about introducing the new artist, kind of showing our audience what their statement is, where they're at right now, what our thoughts are, what questions we have for them today, like what we want our audience to think about. This is all tied into our social media, our newsletter, and our website. So if you want to be on our newsletter,
yes,
you can sign up. But yeah.
Okay, so I want to finish just looking at the artwork with the Marilyn Minter lithium piece that was chosen for today.
Yeah, today's artist is Marilyn. We just launched her. I think the newsletter went out about 3 hours ago. But yeah, so she kind of raises the questions around like happiness and how can you be happy and like what does that mean? This is a fabulous piece, but there's some other works that I think really, like, I really love. There's one piece called, there's two that are very similar actually, one Dawn and one, what is it called? I'm blanking right now, but they kind of, for me, they really resonate, like the steam, and I know that it can be very sensual as well, but it's also very, you know, that feels like kind of like a lack of breathing or like being trapped, the glass and the steam against the glass. And I feel a lot of us feel like that. We're inside, we're locked up, and it feels kind of, benauwd is the word in Dutch, but I don't know the word in English. But
also, Marilyn made this piece a few years ago and named it Lithium, when what we might have thought of as a crisis is the amount of people going on antidepressants or whether these pills can make us happy, and the whole issue of synthetic happiness. But today, when we look at this image, it's almost a perfect metaphor for where we're at. It almost looks like the smiley face is crying. And I think that feeling of mixed emotion is the one that most of us are suffering from right now. If, you know, it's hard not to feel guilty if you're safe and well right now when so many people are suffering. And it's also hard to feel happy if you're in the midst of that suffering. So um, I think it's a really prescient work, perfect for this moment.
Yeah.
And Marilyn is a big activist on her own. I have to mention that she's been raising, by organizing art events and arts exhibitions with Downtown for Democracy and Planned Parenthood, hundreds of thousands of dollars for abortion rights and Democratic candidates running for office. So raising awareness about Democratic candidates running for office, not necessarily politically campaigning. So, you know, a number of artists on our site are really doing political activities on their own, not all of them, but we want to emphasize that even at a time like this, people are finding positive activities to engage in. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think we're just starting to see the effects, which I know Marilyn's is really active, and like you said, Marilyn's really active in sort of raising awareness for those kinds of issues and how they relate to the female body. And I think we're just starting to see the kinds of effects that this is going to have, you know, on issues that relate back to feminism.
Yeah. I also want to point out that it was very easy for us to give you women artists today.
Yes.
That this is a site that has a dearth of white male artists.
Yeah. No, we're grateful to be able to talk about really strong female artists in this conversation.
Yeah,
So it's good.
yeah.
And do you want to talk, is there a kind of choice? I mean, I know you've talked a lot about wanting to kind of be very diverse in your content. How are you kind of making those decisions?
Well, one thing I just want to emphasize is that we are developing a network of curators and exhibition spaces around the world to help build up the global reach of our site. So just today I heard from Berta Sichel in Spain and Ida Panicelli in Italy.
Right.
And we've reached out to curators in Hong Kong and India and Thailand, and to experts in the United States who are in touch with artists from around the globe. We're looking for African artists. So we actually appeal to you guys that if you have an expertise in any of this or know someone we should be in contact with in terms of reaching a greater amount of artists around the world, you know, please put your email in the chat or send us an email at info@art at a time like this.
Yeah, I can put our email quickly in there if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna do it.
Yes, somebody just commented that we need to reach Central and South America. We do have a curator in Brazil that's been helping us get Brazilian artists, but we want to extend, of course, to throughout the region.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that we're definitely seeing how ArtTable as a kind of network and a community can really, you know, bring people together in this way and kind of be an excellent place to kind of share resources and ideas in order to get something to sort of spread the word during this crisis. And I mean, I think we've spoken a little. I wanted to ask you both about the traction that you've noticed and the way, I mean, I think in everything we've been talking about how quickly things are moving. And I know that the kind of support and the response to the site was pretty overwhelming. How are you kind of noticing it pick up traction in the past couple of weeks?
I mean, we have over 25,000 page views right now. So it's really, it really grew exponentially, you know, like we had, in the weekend, we don't launch any artists. So generally in the weekend, we have, you know, like 500 or 600 people viewing our page, which, you know, like after 2 weeks, I'm already kind of, oh, that's not that much. But like, obviously, if that was the first day, I would have been so happy. So it's really funny how you kind of get desensitized and like get so quickly used to like seeing for like 1,000 or 2,000 people watched your site today, you know. But yeah, it's yeah. I don't know.
We're getting press reaching out to us every day.
Yeah, left to
Like
right.
a day we don't get a press call, we think, what did we do wrong today?
Yeah,
And
like
but I have to say this, like the potential for this to grow is amazing. And I've curated shows in 3-dimensional spaces that haven't gotten 25,000 people coming. You know, that would be an extraordinary success if we had 1,000 people a day or 500 people a day going into a gallery. So we're overwhelmed with this response. I mean,
yeah,
it's incredible to us.
Yeah, and I mean, the title kind of implies, right? The title and our mission can continue for a very long time, and we also, you know, continue to, like we pursue to do so. This is something that we think about even before the COVID-19, and we've been having these conversations on an individual basis together for a while. It's just amazing that we, you know, like live in this digital period where we can invite people to join our thoughts and our conversation. What's also interesting is, I don't know if any of you guys have experience with curating or like online, but none of us had before. And it's very interesting how that differentiate from curating in a physical space and like the immediance of it. Like we're very much tracing what other artists are doing on social media. We're constantly on social media. We've actively reached out in the last couple of days and this past weekend on artists that we've seen really created something directly right now. So it's like very much more interactive and more fast and like trying to get something that's, you know, like it's very immediate, you know, it's different, but very, very fun. Like it's
really fun.
A lot of fun.
And basically we're doing this as a 2-person team. We get up at 7 a.m. to launch for the day. And we usually have long conversations at night before we go to bed about what the next week is going to look like and what issues we want to be raising. And
so kind of also it's like a learn as you go, right? Because we had like 48 hours to prepare the show initially to launch the first 6. So every day we're both, I think, very reflective and like we constantly ask each other questions at the end of the night, like where are we now? Are we taking the right direction? Are we having the right representation of artists that around this crisis? You know, do we need to have more people from South America? Like we need to have more people, you know, in Europe, like in Italy, like they're having a really hard time and they've been ahead of us. Like where are they right now? What stage are they in, you know? So
yeah, we have quite a few Chinese artists, including Ai Weiwei, who I know from my research in China, but they've been dealing with the coronavirus since December. And so we're getting a lot of response from China and Hong Kong right now.
Yeah, so Ai Weiwei is, for example, a perfect example that has given us work that is created in response to COVID-19 and is never been shown before. So it's new work. He gave us photographs that his team made in Wuhan in hospitals. Super strong images. They're absolutely gorgeous, but also very, very, very impactful. So,
I want to give people some opportunities to ask. I want to give everyone an opportunity to ask some questions. So, how we'll do this is I'm just going to first pick out the ones that were in the chat, and then you could either continue to put questions in the chat or just blink aggressively or wave your hands and I will get to you.
Go with your mouse to the bottom to participants. There's a raise your hand feature. So if you can.
Yes.
Did you say that or no?
No, sorry, I keep going.
So then you can raise your hand and then you're the leader. I don't know why.
I know, I'm like
from you.
You're just doing my job for me. I was like, yeah, perfect. Just raise your hand. You don't have to literally raise your hand. That might be slightly more dignified. So Roy, okay, so let's go from the bottom actually. Roy, I'm trying to look how I can quickly unmute people.
I just have to point out something. A lot of people are posting names of artists. This only gets us so far. I mean, we know a lot of artists from all over the world.
They can unmute themselves.
And we appreciate the recommendations. What we need are introductions. We need at least their contact information. And hopefully an introduction from you that connects us.
Barbara,
That
I think it's better if people send us just an email on info at art at a time like this, and we can respond and kind of open a dialogue with you guys. And
that's right, absolutely,
Because just this chat, you know, like I don't think it's a good idea to start sharing emails on a chat, but I think, you know, email us on info@art at a time like this. We're constantly looking on that email. We'll get back to you guys and we can open a dialogue and see how we can support one another in this time of crisis.
Right.
Okay, so let's begin the questions. And just we want to kind of draw attention to how many people there are here from across the country and calling in from, you know, who knows where. So please just say who you are before you ask your question, where you're calling in from, and then ask your question. That'd be great. So let's begin with Royale, sorry.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Roya Alt. I'm the Assistant Director at the California Museum of Art, Thousand Oaks. We're in Ventura County. And I was just really curious about if you could speak in more detail about your social media strategy with regards to the exhibition. You talked about touting some of it on social media, but if you have any more specific examples, that would be awesome. That's kind of the world I work in.
Oh, okay. Well, so, I mean, we've consulted with a bunch of people also. We've called a few women that we know and men also that we know that work in that field. But what has been suggested to us is to have a short, captivating caption. We generally have a question in the caption to kind of trigger some sort of response. It is also, I know that it's very important to interact with your following and kind of like, you know, like and comment on your following and, you know, be active on their platforms as well. And in terms of starting your dialogue, we don't have that much time for that now. We are looking for interns that can also help us with that. But I know that just if you are looking for advice and to grow your following, that is one of the most important things I would suggest for you. And then the consistency of posting, right? So it's like an everyday, for us, it's an everyday thing. In the weekend, we generally post questions, just white on black. And we have our artist each day and then a story tied with the artist, but we just usually feature like one work per artist, and we just kind of try to drive everyone to the exhibition page, because that's where we want you to see the work and view the work as opposed to Instagram.
We also do Instagram stories, which are kind of intriguing to get into, where there may be 6 images of the artist, but we have something like the artist statement flowing from one to the other, or questions flowing from one to the other.
Yeah.
And then I think another very important thing we're doing is the newsletter that goes out every day. There's a place on the site where you can subscribe to the newsletter. And the newsletter becomes a way for us to communicate with people, but it also is a supplement to the exhibition, because we don't have that much text on the exhibition, but the text that goes along with the exhibition is in the newsletter every day. And so when you get to the site, you have a visual experience, but the newsletter supplemented, kind of like wall labels might do.
Okay.
Right. Because the exhibition page is the artwork and the artist statement. In the newsletter, it's language that is written by Barbara and kind of reflects our curatorial vision. So those are 2 different elements. I mean, I've had so much response from friends, but also people from the art world that are kind of like, oh, you know, like I had 2 people text me on Sunday night being like, oh, who do you have for tomorrow? Because they're just kind of looking forward to getting our newsletter. So I think, again, having that consistency, like if you start doing that, you might not have success in your first week, but people need to get used to what you're doing and get used to your program. So you have to stick with what you're doing.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Angelica, you had a question at the beginning. Do you want to where's Angelica?
Yes. Is that
Hi.
unmuted?
Yes, yeah.
Hi, Imogen. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I had a question now since I have my own private art advisory firm, and I keep thinking of how could we all help these artists right now. As we all know, they're suffering so tremendously financially, and it's such great effort that we're putting out curatorial ideas, and I keep trying to do the same on my side, but I keep thinking, how could we still be able to help their sales as they're suffering tremendously at a time like this?
Yes,
Right.
we are kind of running parallel to the market. I'm friends with a lot of dealers who the dealers are suffering, the artists are suffering. I have to say that Anne and I have like almost no income coming in. We're doing this totally out of pocket.
Sorry, guys.
And we think that what helps people right now is maybe thinking about something other than the market. I don't think that that is really at the forefront of people's minds right now, except for, I suppose there are certain, let me put it this way, a good friend of mine who's a dealer in Hong Kong, so she's been dealing with this for a few months now, said that every day she gets a phone call from somebody who wants to sell something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But she has nobody to offer it to.
Right.
And I think that I've lived in the art world a long time. This happened around 2008. This happened after 2011.
Yeah.
And the art world as a whole survived. It reformed itself each time.
Right.
And it's interesting to see what the possibilities are that come out of a situation that makes us reevaluate our priorities. But I'm optimistic that something new will come out of it. Maybe what we're offering is a new model.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions? I think Cindy Glansrock had her hand raised. Cindy?
Hi.
Hey, Cindy.
Cindy.
Hi, how are you guys? Thank you so much. You're doing an awesome job. Excellent work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
We love it. I just wanted to say that, yes, I think you're right. It's not about monetizing things. I was just curious because people do want art around them in their homes right now. And some people might even be thinking about like, oh, I wish I had a piece of artwork to meditate to, or look into art that down the road. Maybe I should have art in my life. You know, I haven't up until now. So perhaps there is something on the site, you know, because I get engaged by your stories. I love your stories, and you engage us by telling us about your curatorial vision. So that helps people that are maybe new buyers or people that have never thought about having art in their home on their spending.
Well, we have links to all the galleries.
Yeah.
But I mean, just in terms of your curatorial view, like as a new buyer, maybe, because there are some people out there, I've talked to some that are young people that are like, oh, Cindy, I know you put art, you know, in spaces, but how do I learn about what to buy right now or put something on my wall? Maybe something, I'm just wondering if you could be, you know, advise people on if you're looking now.
Oh, you know, it's so funny is that my whole career of making no money as a critic and a curator, people have said I should be an art advisor. And that is the one thing I know I can't do. I'm, you know, and this site sort of reflects my history and Anne's history of wanting to look at art in a completely different way than how it looks on somebody's wall in their house.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with Barbara. I don't think either of us have any desire to you know, like start advising people on their sales. But again, you know, like we're more than, you know, like we really want to support the artists, and especially participating artists. We're making an effort to find more emerging talent that reflects on the crisis at the moment. So we know that they are probably the ones that are suffering the most right now, and in terms of the more established artists. So yeah, we really leave that up to their galleries and stuff to navigate any potential clients to making a sale. You know, we don't want to touch our hands on that.
And there are many, many gallery websites that are doing that right now.
Maybe that's something you could mention, you know, on the site, that people could go to the galleries and contact them directly or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's on there.
Okay, I didn't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's fine. But that's on there. So yeah, that's on there. And
Right.
I'm sure that a lot of you guys have gotten a lot of newsletters from galleries from their online viewing rooms on Basel and stuff. So I'm sure that's something that people have seen already.
Okay, thank you.
I've received a lot of them. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when something moves online, it kind of, I mean, I feel like I associate online with the commercial space. I feel like museums, just because some museums have excellent online presence, but yeah, I think of what you're doing as, you know, functioning like a kind of, like a sort of formal exhibition in a way. And so, you know, that kind of commercial side of it doesn't exist. It's more about kind of finding, you know, kind of finding the art for this moment.
And we are presenting a lot of artists who've done challenging work, who haven't necessarily had a market.
Yeah.
You know, it's very important to us that we're presenting emerging artists who've done conceptual work, artists who've done political work, who have worked outside the margins of the market and only recently may have come into the market. So I think there's a lot of art that we can present that gets overlooked when you're thinking of it in terms of possessing it. It's a different kind of way of having dialogue around art.
Okay, well, I think we're just about out of time, and I don't see any more questions or hand raising. So I want to thank Barbara. I want to wish you a happy birthday as well. I think we can do kind of a snaps for that, and say thank you so much for doing this on your birthday. That's great. And to thank you both for participating.
Thank you so much for your support.
yeah,
I put
for
those
joining us. It's so
Yeah.
We put our email in the chat, right?
Yes, so for those who missed it, it's in the chat, info@art@a-time-like-this, if you want to be included in the newsletter. I also just want to say this is ArtTable's first virtual program, and so great to have Anne and Barbara kind of talk about, you know, what I think is at the root of all of this is just connecting people using art and kind of building this sort of online community when we all need it. So we will have a program on Thursday as well at noon with Maria Elena Gonzalez, who I think is on this call. Hello, Maria Elena. She will be talking us through her work. And then next week we have two fantastic kind of more professional development AT Connect programs with two speakers. So please keep checking out our website. We do ask for donations for these events, but they are optional. Anything that you can give right now would be fantastic. So yeah, thank you all. And thank you again, Barbara and Anne. Looking forward to tomorrow's artist.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
All right, thank you both.
Thank you so much.